Welcome to episode 11 of the St. Charles Podcast. I'm Eric Wood,
Father Mark Brown.
and we are here to talk about the state of the continuing church
Yes.
and recent developments over the last few weeks.
Yes.
And the first major development would be the split of the APA.
The APA split about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 now, over the direction the APA is going. And I know they created a Facebook hit group, Usual Suspects, that came out and started attacking the Bishop Giffen, and making all sorts of slanderous and ad hominem attacks against him and mocking him. But if you actually sat and talked to the bishop, you found out that when this whole G4 thing started, he had questions. Are we just doing the same thing over and over? You know, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing that has failed over and over and over, and you expect it one day it's going to work. So is now the G2, soon to be G1, are they doing anything new? Are they just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic? He made some good points. Are we so tied to the 28 prayer book that we worship it like an idol? Mm-hmm. And a lot of things, some things he says, I don't agree with him, but some of the things he says, I'm like, has made me think, am I doing what is right for the church and the culture as a whole, or just for my little group here? So watching these things, Archbishop Jones and Archbishop Haviland, especially Haviland, did not like what he was saying. He was rocking Haviland's little empire, much like Calvin Robinson did, Father Robinson did. So at the Synod, right after the Synod, Archbishop Jones sent him a letter.
Presiding Bishop Jones.
Yes, Archbishop Jones sent Bishop Giffen. There's lots of bishops and it's kind of hard to keep them straight.
It's a lot.
Yeah, sent Bishop Giffen a letter telling him he will be deposed September 1st for abandoning the APA. I read the letter. Haviland's all over that letter. It's the same kind of gobbledygook you saw when he wrote Father Robinson and everything else. And making statements that are not, you didn't see the bishop making, you didn't hear about it. And I'm like, what is this? And then the next day, next week, Bishop Giffen's standing committee came together and they voted to leave the APA. And they did. And the majority of the parishes left with them. Now, one of the things the APA and the ACC, they mock this diocese because it's small.
But that's only because this diocese originally was a foundation piece of the ACNA,
yes,
where they signed off on all the early Common Cause partnership documents. Mm-hmm. They sought refuge under the REC banner for a brief period of time to create All Saints, essentially.
Yes, and that's what they did. So the APA and the Continuum doesn't want you to know this. And that's an embarrassment to them. Why? I don't know.
I didn't know this until a couple of weeks ago, Father.
Yeah, and you start looking. I'd heard back when I was the REC that this had happened, but the REC doesn't run around, parading things around. Hey, look what we did. They just quietly do things. And that's what happened. The bishop out there decided, hey, the ACNA, this is the way to go, more ecumenical, and the majority of the diocese went with him. And Bishop Giffen became the bishop in 2012.
After all this had happened in 2009, 2010.
Yeah, all this had already happened. He became the bishop of what we call a rump diocese,
yes.
What was left. Like our diocese was a rump diocese of what's left of two groups that left over a period of time. The first group going into helping form the APA, and then the next group forming Bishop Hewitt's diocese.
Holy
Cross. So we're what's left. We're a rump diocese of what's left. So that's going on, and so he left. The majority of the parishes went with him, and it just kind of, this Facebook page got a little more and more unhinged, and I laughed because I saw Father Ricky McCarl made a comment on it, basically taking them to task for how they're acting, behaving, and probably within less than a day, the owner of that paused to shut it down. So somebody somewhere told him enough of that.
Father Ricky's funny.
Yeah, he's funny. I like reading him. I don't agree with everything. Well, then again, he doesn't agree with everything with me. But when I saw him come in, and I'm like, okay, folks outside our little APA group are starting to notice these things. Well, also some other things happened at that synod that I got from sources I have. When I was in the Marines, I learned to develop sources, because a lot of times in the Marine Corps, lower ranking officers or staff NCOs would do what we call politicking behind to kind of insulate our superiors. We would pass information along behind back channels, and then to get it, so it would
Plausible deniability.
Right, and that's what we learned to do. So I do this. I mean, I got people contacts. Name a jurisdiction, I know somebody in it. I mean, I'm not to my own horn, but when you have an archbishop calling, you're going, okay, what's going on? And I'm like, I'm in my garage going, well, kind of explaining, how do you know this? I'm not going to get my sources up. The little birds that sat in the APA Synod, it's dismal what's going on in the APA and the ACC. It is dismal. They present a great front, and they have a couple of parishes that are doing great, just like our diocese has a couple of parishes that are doing great. We're one of them. Okay, but you look at the growth numbers. Last year, the APA grew globally 2%, nationally 1%. And the ACC actually reports negative growth.
Well, it's just demographics, Father, in my opinion, where we are living through the passing of the last 1928 generation of people that grew up on the 1928 prayer book and sustained 1928 parishes because that's their heritage point, right? But we are living through the demographic change of that generation passing.
Yes.
And the next generation in the same amount of numbers, there's just not that many people exposed to the 1928 prayer book and anymore.
No, most of them don't have an idea of what it is. And that's part of the problem. Are we hanging on to something that we have turned into an idol? Because like I told a bishop one time, I said, you understand when the 1928 prayer book came out in 1928, right? That there was a huge backlash against it because the folks who were still using the 1890 version were like, oh, what's this crazy newfangled thing?
It had theological implications too, I think, where it was perceived as being too Anglo-Catholic by some people.
Some people thought it was too Anglo-Catholic. Some use 1662. So every time a new prayer book comes out, there's always why. There's always pushback. Sometimes it's good pushback. Like when the 79 came out, and some really good articles and books were written on the theological problems with it. But then we have a knee-jerk reaction when the REC releases their prayer book in 2007, 2008.
Which is based off the 28.
This is based off the 28, and it has, any REC priest are watching this, go ahead and forgive me now. They have two rights. I hate me saying that. They have the right one, which is the 1928 almost verbatim. And the second one is 1928 verbatim, but in modern English.
Which structurally does tend to mirror the 1979's framework of a right one, right two.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
they don't want to have that comparison.
It would be completely devoid of any theological problems that might arise from the 1979.
Yeah, it has no theological problems. It's there. You can see it. The theology doesn't change. It just gets rid of where in the Bible, in the prayer book, it'll say always. If you listen to me saying it, you're going to say always. Why? Because in the 1500s they said always, and they meant always. And I tell people who come here, like, well, what is that? And I'm like, well, this is what the word means, and it's changed, and blah. So I have to give a grammar class to a lot of people that coming in, and sometimes, well, you notice I'll read John 3:16 out of the prayer book, because that King James version of John 3:16 comes from 1611. The King James version I grew up memorizing, which is now muscle memory in my brain, is the 1789 version, 90 of the King James. There's two versions, and then you have the New King James, so that one in there too. So Bishop Giffen is like, hey, let's look and be more ecumenical. Because if you look in the continuum, except for the UECNA, if you look in the continuum, everybody's Anglo-Catholic. And who's more Catholic than the other? And Bishop Giffen is like, we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Let's be a little more broad church. Let's look at doing different, prayer books and allowing that. Allowing a little bit of difference. Like what England used to be. If you go to England now, you can see Anglo-Catholics, low churchmen, broad churchmen, all within a same diocese. Well, continuum, they run away from that like the hair's on fire for some reason. I'm an Anglo-Catholic. Father Glore here, he's evangelical. We get along fine. My first bishop outside the continuum was a Reformed Episcopal Church bishop who was so Reformed, he taught at Reformed Theological Seminary. Our first meeting, we sat down and we talked. He said, let's hash it out. We hashed it out. He got up and walked around the table, hugged me, and said, let's go win souls for Christ. And he was the bishop that I gauge all my prior bishops, even the Anglo-Catholic ones, against him because he was such a good bishop. And our churchmanship was different. Our theology on the core values were exactly the same as some of the other ones. We differed. And there was no problem. There was no problem with that.
I think most people are hungry for orthodoxy. And there's a tolerance level of different types of churchmanship that your average seeker is looking for in 2025, but the one thing they're not willing to compromise on is that core orthodoxy.
Yeah. Well, that's, and if you look, the UECNA and the Anglican Catholic Church, us, APEC, what do we all agree on that core orthodoxy? We may disagree on how we express it, but that orthodox core is there. The creeds, the councils, the scriptures, that's all there. Now, UECA may add you have to believe the 39 articles, which the continuum don't. But then the continuum said we have to follow the affirmation of St. Louis, or
one narrow interpretation of the affirmation of St.
Louis, or the Quattrell of Chicago back in the 1870s. And people are like, what? What are these things? Are they necessary? No. I mean, what's necessary? What's the core? And now you can say that about all Christians. Even across the street, St. Mary's. What are the core beliefs of St. Mary's? They're exactly the core beliefs here at St. Charles. The problem we come into is men, people, and what we add to it. If we all would just stay with the core, that's what Bishop Giffen says, stay with the core. Because he said something, I kind of looked at it, he was like, there's enough Anglican churches here in Alabama, and he told me, to form its own diocese. I'm like, well, we have 2 in a mission, ACC has 2, ACC had 3, but one got shut down in my hometown of Atmore. So we have barely 8. He said, well, there's also about 6 or 7 charismatic Episcopal churches. I heard the word charismatic, and it was like, whoa, stop. And I looked up. They dress like us. They act like us. They may play contemporary music. And I saw one place that had a big screen, which is anathema for me. But I looked at what they believed. I looked at their core beliefs. It is exactly the core beliefs here at St. Charles. Exactly the core beliefs at Archbishop Jones Cathedral in St. Barnabas over in Dunwoody. It's the same core. They just express it differently in a way that I'm not comfortable with, but are they expressing heresy? No. They don't hold to women's ordination. They don't hold, I don't think they hold the 39 articles, but they hold to the creeds and the councils. They just express it differently. Okay? In the continuum, we got so used to blinders and only high church Anglo-Catholic. That's it. We miss fellowship with so many people. And not everybody who walks through the door of a continuing church wants the high church Anglo-Catholic smells and bells, chanting, singing, and all that. Maybe they want the orthodoxy, but they don't like the aesthetics. But if you have another, you go down to another church down the street that's also Anglican in the same diocese, they're not nosebleed high Anglo-Catholics, they're more evangelical. I'm more comfortable.
That's how it was in the old Episcopal days in Alabama, where St. Stephen's in Huntsville was the evangelical parish. Nativity was much more broad church or high churchy.
Yeah, and that's the way it was. The main group, the continuums, that broke away in the late 70s. Majority of them were Anglo-Catholic. Okay, and they brought that, and it's almost donatistic the way they act. I mean, I just found the case out with the APA, Father Sweeney, who came from the ACNA, who has valid orders, and they said, well, they want to conditionally ordain him. For what reason? Well, it came from the ACNA. Why are you doing that? It's this, our bishop didn't touch him type of Donatism. When I went from the UECNA to the Reformed Episcopal Church, I was examined by Bishop Ray Sutton, who's now the presiding bishop. He and Bishop Grote of blessed memory.
Hard to find a more impressive bishop than
Yeah.
Ray Sutton.
Oh yeah, very impressive bishop. I was with him and Bishop Grote and Bishop Nolan all day as a deacon, as they casually examined me. It wasn't like under bright lights and just ramming questions at me, rapid fire. They just sat and talked to me pretty much all day. We went to lunch and then we went to supper. And I still remember, I know Bishop Sutton does not remember me. I mean, why would he? This was 17 years ago. And I only met him one time. But I remember the next morning we went in to get the verdict. Okay, am I going to be able to continue to become a priest? And Bishop Sutton looked at me and he said, well, you're a little too Protestant. And I remember the Reformed Episcopal Church telling me, because I was going to the Reformed Theological Seminary, and he said, I would like for you to go to a more Catholic seminary. So I found one and he gave me the thumbs up and I went to it. I still joke about that because everybody, in the continuum, they talk about how Protestant and Reformed they are, and I'm back in my mind, I'm listening to Bishop Sutton telling me I'm too Protestant. People around here, they know I'm not Protestant. But the issue is, when I came here, my bishop, Morris, was allowing me, as a Reformed Episcopal Church priest, to take care of 3 continuing parishes that had no priest. One in Pensacola, my hometown of Atmore, and then here.
Because there's a priest shortage in the continuing
There's a
world.
huge priest shortage. Most of the priests are old. Well, you saw that at our synod, like most of our congregations. I'm 60. I'm one of the youngest priests in our diocese, okay? In our province, probably. When I came here, Archbishop Upham of blessed memory approached me and said, well, we want to do a conditional ordination on you. I'm like, why? Well, you come from the Episcopal Church. Well, I know why they're doing it. And so I played the game. And I said, oh, okay, well, let me tell you who ordained me to the priesthood and who ordained me to the diaconate. Now, Presley Hutchins ordained me to the diaconate. Well, everybody in APCK knows Hutchins. He has valid orders. I'm like, oh, okay. And then Bishop Nolan in the REC. But he was consecrated a bishop by Archbishop Reber, Bishop Hutchins. Oh, and this guy, and I mispronounced his name on purpose, this guy Waggle, well, he's the bishop down in Montevallo.
It's an APEC bishop.
APEC bishop, who consecrated the bishop who was questioning my orders. So he quickly put 1 + 1 + 1 together, realized that if my orders are invalid, so are his. And I hate that game. I mean, look at it. If you have valid orders, and you came from the ACA, and you have valid orders, Father Glore has valid orders. There's no hands that have touched hairspray, meaning there's no women that have ordained him, ordained him. His bishop was not created by 3 women, and even if a woman is in there, you still have 3 bishops. Okay, one's a woman without orders. You still got 2 bishops with orders. Okay, so it goes all the way back to the Donatist. You're not pure enough, and that was declared heresy 1,800 years ago, 1,700 years ago. And it's rife in the continuum. They'll do it with each other.
Yeah.
They'll do it. I mean, they will do it to each other. If they seek conditional confirmation, it's a blight on the continuum. So all that happened. Bishop Giffen's like, hey, let's try something new.
In a way, it's a seeker repellent issue also, where when seekers from Tech or the ACNA come, it's a lot to ask them to say, you have to be conditionally confirmed.
Yeah.
Because it has all these implications downstream, and it encourages that same seeker to go to the ACNA parish wherever they're at, where they're going to be received.
Right.
And I think that's been happening for 20 years where the continuing church is in the state it's in, because that trickle of people leaving Tech that would have otherwise come here, that did come here from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, they don't come here anymore. Traditionally, they go to the ACNA place in the same community, because I think part of it is that implicit affirmation of their prior spiritual experience, and not a forced rejection of everything they come from.
We have people coming here who are evangelical, but they don't have baptism certificates. In certain parts of the continuum, you need to be baptized because you don't have a piece of paper. I have a young man seeking confirmation. He is from Russia, okay? I had a guy from Mexico about 3 or 4 years ago seeking to be received. I said, well, we need your baptism certificate. I mean, I had to produce it, your baptism certificate and your confirmation certificate that you've received the sacraments, and you present those. When I came in, my bishop, okay, you don't have, right, no, I don't have I was a Baptist. They don't give you those. Go to the rolls of the Baptist church where you were, and when your name was entered, get a photocopy, have it, certified by the pastor of the church or whatever, and that will pass as your certificate of baptism, because in the Baptist church, you're not added to the rolls until you're baptized. I called my old church. Lucky for me, the lady was the secretary when I was baptized, was still there, Miss Wright, and she went straight to it, photocopied it. Within a week I had it. The new pastor there signed off this as an authentic, and then we're done. And that's what I told the young man. I said, we just need this from Russia. And he's like, and if you can't, have your mom and dad write a statement that they watched you be baptized and have it notarized.
It is in the creed. One baptism for the remission of sins.
That's it. And you make it easy. They don't have, you don't sit there and start questioning their faith and everything else. Okay, how can I believe you, unless you prove to be a liar, I'm going to believe you. So, like Ronald Reagan says, trust but verify, and that's what I do. There's only been one person that's come here that had to be confirmed, that was confirmed by a woman. Women don't have valid orders, so I laid hands on you. And even that person said, I always felt uncomfortable about that. And I explained it. I didn't sit down and just hammer her about this. I said,
we got to have some standards.
You got to have some standards.
You got to have some standards.
But I sat down in a pastoral way and talked to her about it. So I affirmed her faith. She's had her faith, and that faith, and it's not a Donatism, because somebody says, what about Donatism? No, she never had orders, because Scripture never allows a woman to have orders. But if I had looked at somebody, let's say, I don't know, that came from
Diocese of San Jacinto.
Yeah, Father Sweeney came in here, and he said, we're going to join. Okay. Come on in. Oh, yeah, you're received. It's a little reception. You're received. Good. Let's go. Keep going. And that's it. Father Glore is licensed to preach and give the sacraments here. He is not rebaptized or reconfirmed. He's ACNA. So when I see the continuing doing that, it puts a bad taste in my mouth, and it puts a bad taste in other people's mouths, because it seems as though they're not affirming. And from what I know of Father Sweeney, he's a very smart man, very faithful man. It surprised me he submitted to it, but I understand, it's up to him to do it. I was prepared to walk away from St. Charles if they wanted to conditionally reordain me. And I'm like, not happening. And believe me, I wasn't going to let him do it to Father Glore. That's something we don't need to.
It's a narrow theology in many ways, where there are about 85 million Anglicans in the world, and a lot of those churches have major problems, like Tech, the Church of England.
Nigeria had it with the prosperity gospel,
right?
All that stuff.
But to say that out of those 85 million self-professing Anglicans, there's about 50,000 real Anglicans.
Are you talking about the continuing?
Yeah, it just doesn't pass the smell test for regular people.
You probably should go a lot lower than 50,000.
You're being generous.
I know you're being very generous. Yeah, and that's just elitism. You know.
Now, it's one thing to say, which I believe, that the continuing church is just as valid as any other Anglican church,
Yeah.
that it's a valid expression of Anglicanism, that it even has like elements of it that are more pure than what you would find in other parts of where you find Anglicans.
Yeah.
But to say it's the only real Anglican church it's a tough pill to swallow.
Well, it's like you can read in some of the writings, and this attitude comes along that we're the one true church. I mean, you hear that from Rome, you hear that from the Orthodox. We're the one true church. You know, Rome puts out a diagram of the church. It has Jesus in one straight line to Rome. And that's historically not correct, but that's what they indoctrinate their people to think. So did the Orthodox. And to see Anglicans do that is so distasteful, so just makes bile rise up in me, because I thought we're supposed to be beyond that. Christ had 12 apostles, and then Judas betrayed him, then Matthias came in, and then Paul. So that's 14 apostles. And the 14 apostles spread out over the known world at the time, planting churches. You know, Peter didn't run around everywhere doing this. Peter was first among equals. But for anybody to say that everybody has to be traced back to him, I'm sorry. There's Roman Catholic bishops walking around today that can't trace their orders back to Peter. They trace them to John or James or Matthias or Matthew, especially if they're coming from India. And they're all equally valid.
The Egyptian ones go right back to Mark. They've
Yeah.
got this really impressive.
Go right back to Mark. Who did he come from? Well, he did come from Peter in Antioch, but Peter was the bishop of Antioch for 20 years before he went to Rome. So why isn't the Coptic Pope the head of the church? Well, because the ecumenical councils gave us 5 patriarchs, and we have the one among the one of honor is Rome. That's it. He was not given a power that Rome claims he has. He was never given that power. And that's a different subject to get on, but I see that happening in the continuum, especially with Archbishop Haberland. You know, that's why he's jokingly called the Pope of Athens, and it upsets them. But I will say it over and over again. You act like the Pope of Athens, you'll be called the Pope of Athens.
It's funny.
It's funny, you know, but it happens because you see that. He acts that way. And as the G3 is coming to G1, another thing Bishop Giffen saw that he didn't like was the ACC just blowing by agreements.
He was upset about some bishop being created in New Orleans that overlapped with his territorial jurisdiction or something like that.
Created a bishop. Well, first of all, in 2017, all of the archbishops got together. Haverland, all of them. We will not make any more bishops. We have enough.
Because we'd already have a problem with our bishop to parishioner ratio.
Yes, so we don't need any more bishops. That was the agreement since 2017. But what happens in 2025? Archbishop Haverland decides, I need another bishop, and he just creates one without consultation, without talking to the bishops already in the area. And that's what happened. I mean, when I was in Pensacola, we had not only the ACNA, EMEA, we had UECNA, and we had ACC, and one other one that folded a long time. So we had 4 to 5 Anglican bishops, plus tech,
It's a lot of bishops.
coming into Pensacola because all of these jurisdictions, and it's just mass confusion. You know, the people in the pew, they just want to come and worship God. They don't care about all this stuff. But see, Haverland did that. So that's another thing. And Archbishop Jones, Bishop Gaffin's superior, just turned a blind eye, didn't say anything. Didn't defend his bishop, didn't defend. So what's going on? Well, if you watch what's happening, the ACC is absorbing everybody. They're not making and creating these geographical dioceses like Bishop Hewitt. I mean, I've talked to Bishop Hewitt twice personally for hours, and the vision he had is a great vision. I wish it would be implemented, but Archbishop Haverland has no desire whatsoever to implement Bishop Hewitt's plan.
Which would be like geographic
Graphical
dioceses, where there would be an Anglican diocese of Alabama with a local bishop that travels to and oversees
All of Alabama.
all of Alabama, or however you carve it
Right,
up.
maybe Alabama, part of the Tennessee Valley up in Tennessee, maybe over toward the east part of Mississippi, until it grew to certain parts of the other sides you can do it. That was the vision of 2017. That was the vision I was told in 2023. That was the vision I was told in 2024. And the vision in 2025, everybody folds into ACC. Now, part of the reason I think Jones is doing it, Jones has been convinced that when Haverland retires, he's going to be in charge of everything. My sources in the ACC are like, that's not happening. Haverland has already picked his successor. You're probably going to see this when all that comes to light, when it finally happens, when Archbishop Jones finally gets out of his euphoria and he sees what's going on. We'll see what happens. I can't see it. I wish we would become one. I truly do wish we would become one. But all the manipulation and antics you see, and you can all lay it back at the ACC, whether it's that Wasson woman, and everything else, and even going back to what they did to Father Robinson, it's always Haverland keeps his hands clean because he has an attack group that goes out and goes after you. I've watched it. I watched what happened at St. David's.
I've seen that too.
And I've watched what happened with Father Calvin. You know, they finally released Father Calvin in July of this year. Everybody thought back in February. No, he wasn't released until July of this year. And when they released him under Canon 10.8, which is a non-disciplinary canon. It's just basically, he's left, bye.
It's hard to keep up with their canons. Like, I read them, and it's a lot, and they look a lot different than the APEC canons.
Oh, yeah, they do.
The APEC canons are more streamlined. Mm-hmm. It's not a big, voluminous thing.
Oh, well, this is the canon right here. I'm not going to read it, but that's the whole canon. But basically, it comes down to is Father Robinson didn't do anything wrong. We just let him go. But what? They drug him through the mud. They accused him of being a Nazi, accused him of being anti-Semitic. Right. All these things they did, and then they turn around and this is what they do. So they character assassinate you and then quietly let you go. And that's what they did with Father Robinson, and that's what they're doing with Bishop Giffen.
One thing that all this makes me reflect on is a post that Bishop Giffen put out a month or two ago, which is relaying a story from when he was a seminarian at Nashotah House. Mm-hmm. And he's visiting with a group of people one night that includes the spouses of other seminarians. And at the time, this is majority tech people. Mm-hmm. And he's having a conversation with the spouse of another seminarian, and the continuing church comes up. And he's familiar with it because he's in this seeking process and he's intrigued by it. He's exposed to it a little bit, or other people there at
right.
Nashotah House. And she bluntly asked him, what do they think they're continuing?
Yeah.
And from a recent tech to continuing church, there's a lot of overlap, but there's some stuff that didn't really ever exist in the old English church or tech, like some of the universalism and going through like the Eastern route to get to some of these doctrines that like just have no history in the English church.
Yeah.
And it makes me reflect on that post of Bishop Giffen of like, what are we continuing?
Well, he's asked in some of his posts this summer, what are we continuing? He's asking that question. And guess what? He's not getting solid answers from the continual. They don't know. When I got here, when visitors would walk through the door, the laity would go up and they would get a rant or a dissertation on what we were against. And they would just attack the Episcopal Church. And people would leave. I finally figured out, especially when I became the rector here, and I was here a lot more, what was going on. And I stopped it. Now I have certain people, if I know somebody's coming, they'll say, I'm not here, I know somebody's coming. What do? I pick up the phone, I call the vestry, I call you, I call Alan, I call somebody. I say, keep these certain people away from the visitors that are coming.
Yeah.
And because that's what they do. And as we've grown, we have more people that can interact with the visitors. And it's not about what we're against, it's what we're for, what we're going to do.
But that worked in 1984.
It worked in 84.
It worked in 1994. I don't think it works in 2025 the same way it did then.
No, it doesn't. And nobody, because most of the young people walking through that door weren't born. Their birthday starts with a 2. Okay.
They might have tech trauma or something like that, but it's from events that happened way afterwards.
Afterwards, way after. It doesn't look at, if they came from tech and they were born any time after 1980, they've been exposed to women's ordination.
All they know is the 1979 prayer. They might know right 1 versus right 2,
but that's all they know. And to come in, and as soon as you walk through the door, if I walk through door of a Baptist church or a Roman Catholic church, and I'm met by the laity, and they're going to give me a laundry list of what they're against, I'm going to smile, and I'll never darken the door
Yeah,
again.
it's probably better to say, we use the 1928 prayer book, which is very similar to Rite One, which you
Mhm.
might remember.
But you might remember,
There you
that's
go.
it. And when they ask me, I'm just like, we're traditional Orthodox Christians, that we are worshiping the same way we've worshiped for 2,000 years. Going on, and I'll say, a lot of things you're going to see me doing, you can see came from the temple period of Judaism. They go, really? That intrigues them because it shows that continuity of worship, of going all the way back to that way God has always, since Deuteronomy, said you should be worshiping me with a sacrifice and certain things. So we'll go to 2000, but we can also go back another 2000 with some of the things we do in our service. But it's that continuity, and I eventually get into theology and what we do, but it's also on our website, so you got an idea when you get here what we're for. And it's like I told Caleb, don't put what we're against, what we're for, what we're here against. What we're here for, not what we're here against. We don't want to start off on a negative. The continuum so much had the leadership negative. Now there's some places like St. James on the Glebe that's outstanding, doing well. And you look at pictures there, they just got little kids running around all over the place, like quarter of the church, half their church, or young families and children. They got it right. I've met the priest there. He's not like.
The APA does have some exceptional priests.
They do have some exceptional priests. And I think it would be if their model was used more than the ACC model. But what I'm seeing coming through with this merger is the ACC model is going to be used more than the APA model. And the APA is looking at a more traditional, that they will just expand it more broad church. That could work.
APA is good with the kids.
They are good with the
Their
kids.
Sunday school curriculum's really good.
Well, we use it here.
Mm-hmm.
We use it here. Well, we can jump from APA to the ACNA, and they've had a very bad couple of weeks. Very bad. It's
Interesting
continuing.
times. So
Interesting times.
the one that fascinates me, because I feel like I can identify in some ways with the Diocese of South Carolina being someone coming out of the Diocese of Alabama. Like, I don't think there's that much space between those two dioceses until maybe 20 years ago. And then it's just a leadership question in that moment, right? And I feel like they've been anchored by the way a very prominent lawyer who did incredible work defending that diocese against Tech all the way to the Supreme Court has been not listened to in a way that I think he demands to be listened to in situations like this.
Runyon, you'd be foolish not to listen to him or his assistant, Miss Thibodeau. They navigated that whole legal mess, even when Episcopalians who were the judges, so you got, they should have excused themselves, but they didn't. But they were able to win this case that was stacked against them.
He put his reputation on the line because he felt a calling. He took that case at the expense of doing other more lucrative work, and he took it the distance. Because he felt like it was a calling.
And then, he would now put in charge of this disciplinary case. Well, Bishop, what's his name? Roosh, yeah. Heard it pronounced different ways. Who has been accused of cover-up from some sexual issues.
Not handling something the right way.
Not handling it the right way, going all the way back to 2023 or something. So Archbishop Wood inherited this from Archbishop Foley Beach. Okay. Now, the guy that was accused by the parishioners, was actually found guilty in civil law and is doing jail time for
They're in a criminal trial.
For sexual assault of minors. Okay,
so there's some there.
There's some there. The bishop didn't handle it according to the canons, and so the people appealed to the archbishop's office, and it's taken for.
It's a mess.
It's a mess. The first case comes up, and the way it's set up, they have the president of the court, and there's some evidence that was there, just like in a civil. The judge says, no, we're not going to present that. That's not whatever.
Well, you've got like a panel of multiple people
Yeah.
that are making these collective decisions, sitting as like trier of fact and law. And some decision is made that these people will be given access as like the court essentially to the prosecutor's file, which is crazy.
And they don't tell the prosecutor.
They don't tell the prosecutors, which is crazy as someone that does criminal defense law. Like the idea of giving the judge access to the prosecutor or the defense lawyer's file.
Yeah, it's like the jury, giving the jury
Yeah,
access to
it's
it,
wild.
but they don't let the prosecutor know, and they also would not allow the victims a voice in the trial.
Well, then you get to the next layer is during the trial, the prosecutors figure out what has happened and what's occurred. And,
Because one
of the court members allegedly starts like influencing the trial, like to tank it, if you will, by bringing up evidence of the investigation being flawed, which is something the collective body of the tribunal had already decided this will not be brought into the trial.
Right.
So he essentially tanks the trial. The prosecutor says this is irredeemably tainted. We need a mistrial.
Right.
And he resigns.
He resigns. And then his assistant, Ms. Thibodeau,
Resigns too.
she
Writes a
resigns
letter.
shortly, writes a very damning letter, which nobody says is wrong. It's just they don't like what she wrote.
Yeah.
And because she was like, she said during
It's
the
like
trial,
a GIF and post. It's
Yeah.
true. You're just not supposed to say that.
Well, she was like, she said it. During the trial, I'm listening, and I realized the other thing he's saying, he got from she called it a Dropbox or whatever.
Yeah.
I guess that's something lawyers hold things in. But how did he get it? Then they come to find out that person went to the office of the Archbishop, asked for it, and the Archbishop gave the thumbs up to give it to him, which totally tainted. I mean,
And then the statement that gets released that all the bishops have signed off on it.
Yeah.
And then you immediately see the Diocese of South Carolina come out and say,
Pennsylvania.
we have not signed off on this, and we support Alan Runyon
Runyon.
fully.
Right, and then you start seeing other bishops coming out. Pennsylvania, well, I wasn't consulted. I don't vote for this, and so people are going, who all voted for this? Who? And the Archbishop's office won't release a list of who, and just kind of doubles down, and then he appoints another prosecutor. Well, this prosecutor resigns when it comes to light that he had benefited from a program that Bishop Rusk had created called the Green Deal. Now, it's not about environmentalism, it's about church planting, okay, the harvest. Now, they had no contact, but he benefited from this program which came from the bishop's office. And when that came out, he resigned. So now 3 prosecutors in the span of, 3 weeks, 4 weeks?
You
have resigned?
can't just find people.
Well, they
the
found a
credibility
fourth one.
of Runyon. You
Yeah,
can't
no.
find that. And
No.
if you want a matter of this significance to be handled the right way, you got to have someone like that
Yeah.
in charge of the prosecution, and you just can't
Well, now
replace
they-
someone like
no,
that.
now they got a 4th lawyer from Florida who's supposed to be running this. And now the victims advocacy groups are rightly up in arms. This whole thing is a debacle. I mean, if this had happened in a criminal trial here in Madison County, I'm sure there are higher level courts that would look at this going, and judicial disciplinary would be going, okay, wait a minute. Like the Eye of Mordor, all of this would start looking at this judge and his trial. What's this travesty of justice
intermediate
going on?
appellate courts and then an
Yeah.
Alabama Supreme Court.
There's nothing like that. It's the Archbishop's office. Well, the Archbishop's office is implicated in the mess and the problem. Well, the Diocese of South Carolina has suspended the assisting bishop because he was part of this. He's on the trial, and he was part of letting this happen. They want to know, that's part of what did he do? What's going on? So his duties as a bishop have been suspended and go on. And now Archbishop Wood's office is going radio silent on things. I love the comment that Father George Congers said on Anglican Script. He kind of looked, and he didn't say this with glee. He kind of very reserved. this is just resolved, it's happened. He said, it took the ACNA less than a generation to become tech, because this is how tech started all their problems. And he's still a tech priest. He's still a priest in the Episcopal Church down in Central Florida. And I thought about that. And I remember what I was saying back in '09, the ACNA's tech, just 1 second before they laid hands on Mickey Jean Robinson. And I was hoping to be wrong. And then when Father George said that, I'm like, yeah, everything I've been saying. I wanted to pick up the phone and couldn't call Bishop Grote, he's passed away, but I wanted to call Bishop Sutton. Remember what you got mad at me about? Bishop Morris, remember that? You know, and all my REC friends. Remember when I said that and y'all just all mad at me? Voila, here it is. And that's just the start of it. I mean, the Archbishop's office has, you know, the thing with the Bishop Warner in the Maryland Atlantic states, big pro-women's ordination. They had incarnation, which is not pro-women's ordination. Had an interim pastor, priest. He comes in and removes them and sends a woman to celebrate Mass. Talk about in your face, let me give you the middle finger, Bishop. They don't want that. So they appeal to the Archbishop, who ignores them because the Archbishop's a big pro-woman ordination guy too. And so they ignore. The bishop comes in, browbeats everybody. Finally, the vestry, this was a bad move on the vestry's part, resigned in mass and protest, which allowed the bishop to stack the deck. And now if you go to Incarnation, you see these women in these collars at Incarnation. And that church is split over it. And the Archbishop, they did nothing. And people going, wait a minute, we're supposed to have dual integrities. You know. Well, what happens when liberals take over? They scream for equality and toleration until they're in power, and then there is no equality, no toleration. Mm-hmm. This is going to continue to happen in the ACNA. No, it's isolated. No, it's going to continue to happen.
That's how it got in the Diocese of Alabama at the end, where if you were a healthy, vibrant Orthodox parish, and I've got one in mind, which was actually the cathedral, that was just not tolerable.
No, it wasn't. You know, and we've talked about an Anglican, a tech priest down in the Birmingham area that was forced out over that. Yeah. The very same issue. So this was going on. Well, okay, they're reeling from that. You know, people up in arms about that. Once again, poor leadership on Archbishop Wood. Okay, then no sooner is that starting to go. Oh, guess who the Archbishop of them just appointed as the Vice Chancellor of Safekeeping. Safeguarding. This extremely woke, progressive, DC lawyer type. Mark Marshall broke that, and he kind of did it in a sarcastic way, because at first he was talking about how great she is, then I realized Mark was being very sarcastic. And I looked at some of her writings, and what can she safeguard? She can't tell you what a woman is. She can't tell you what a pedophile is. So how can she even oversee safeguarding? She can't. What is she going to do? What kind of mess is she going to create, which all progressives create? What's Archbishop Wood's thought process here? Is revealing he's got some issues. Either he lacks a spine, or he's got some serious theological issues.
It's a very diverse grouping, the ACNA, theologically. And not just in like the high church, low church spectrum, but like the Church for the Sake of Others has some parishes that would be indistinguishable from your average tech parish.
Oh, some of them left alone to tech.
Yeah.
Over the homosexual issue.
They want to do the gay marriage so bad.
The gay marriage stuff so bad.
Sexual tech.
Yeah, so they head off to tech to do this. They're so gay affirming. I mean, it's so, the Church for the Sake of Others diocese is so bad that their bishop was supposed to resign sometime in the fall. He went ahead and took early retirement to get out of there before all of the really bad things about that diocese really come to the forefront. But you got all these things happening, 1, 2, 3, and then you got the church, the happening between ACNA and the Church of Nigeria.
Oh yeah, where their bishop says that it's too gay.
It's too gay. A lot of that's a power play.
It's a church that's founded on opposition to gay marriage, essentially. It says it's too gay.
But Bishop Wood is just he's just like he doesn't know what to do. And the only reason that Nigerian bishop said it, he's here in America. He doesn't want to go back to Nigeria. Because all of the...
He wants to have a fiefdom.
He wants his fiefdom here. Now, when everybody was leaving tech, the African bishops were wonderful. Tanzania, Congo, Rwanda.
They set it up, Common Cause Partnership.
They
They
sent
were the core.
missionary bishops here, and they were Texas. They were set up all over the place, and they helped the ACNA form. They gave them some sort of stability to form, and the ACNA doesn't give them enough credit, but they gave Anglicanism for the ACNA enough stability, a platform, and a foundation to form. And when everything seems okay, the bishops were like, we're out of here, we're gone, except for that Nigerian missionary bishop who wants to hang around. They released most of their dioceses, but some of them, they're Nigerian nationals. And they have a different culture, and they didn't want to be part of the ACNA.
They want their own bishops, basically.
On their own bishops. And so he stayed. And now he's trying to
Keep staying.
keep his power, and Bishop Wood doesn't know what to do with it. Now, the Church of Nigeria has admonished him, told him to write a letter of apology. He did.
He quit talking crazy.
Right? He sent it in a apology, and it was accepted. And then like a week later, he's right back to doing it again. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but this happened because of the lack of leadership and the weakness in the ACNA leadership. This is a big tell about what's going on. And I'm hearing, like Mark Marshall's, he's in the Reformed Episcopal Church. He was a huge ACNA supporter, Anglican, unscripted, Anglican Inc. Watching Kevin have to talk about this, he's one of those rah guys from the beginning.
He was there at the beginning.
He was there at the beginning. He was there when the G4 met, and he went. And he was, what are they continuing? He asked a lot of the same questions we were asking here. But looking, and even in Father George's face, they don't want to talk about what's going on in the ACNA, but they're journalists and they're going to talk about it. It's like the last time I watched them, Kevin's like, how can we not talk about this? And we talk about all the other jurisdictions and all the silliness and foolishness that goes on there. But you can see Kevin's face. He hates this. And you're starting to hear, everybody who was the big ACNA supporters, they're quiet. Matt Kennedy, all of them, Ricky McCarroll, all of them quiet. You don't hear them anymore. Mark Marshall's talking about it, will they survive? Anglican Inc., Anglican Unscripted. ACNA is at past tense.
Morale is low.
Morale is low in the ACNA. And now you're starting to hear, well, is it going to last for five more years? Is it going to fracture before the next 5 years?
On the one hand, that's like one way to read it, but on the other hand, it's growing so much compared to every other Anglican jurisdiction.
Yeah.
So there's something positive cooking.
There's something, and I always tell folks, well, what are they growing with?
I don't know that.
Yeah. What are they growing with? Now, if you go to you got some great ACNA parishes, some dioceses like Fort Worth, but you go to some of them around here in North Alabama and Tennessee, and you see what's in there. You're like, I thought this was an ACNA parish, it's a tech parish. You have them like the McKenzie he's passed away, killed in a car accident with his daughter. Was semi-Orthodox, was sent his daughter says she's transgendered. He's pro-homosexual, pro-transgender. Sadly, they were killed on an auto accident a few years ago on her way to taking her to college. Sadly, you go to the Church of Madison. What do they stand for? What are they doing? You go to some of these churches, and you see some of this most man-centered craziness. There's this one church, it was a Protestant church, that during the service, people get up and take a piece of paper and write out their sins, and they go and they nail it to the cross in the middle of the service. Oh, that's crazy. Well, go to some places like Madison and watch them, throwing imaginary things toward the cross. You're like, what are y'all doing? This is like, what's going on? Let me look. I don't see this in Scripture. Oh, the way you're acting, like a parish down in Pensacola, ACNA parish. I'm looking. Well, this is scriptural. I look right at the priest. Yes, it is. You're acting the same way the priest of Baal acted. Mm-hmm. That's that. This worship was for Baal. It was not for God. Yeah, he gets very mad at me. So what is the ACNA winning them with? We have refugees from the ACNA here, and they tell you horror stories. And there are people who are leaving. Some of them are like in the tech, just going home. Yeah. They're not going anywhere else. So, a lot of them going to the ordinariate, going to Rome. I just know a priest who just swam the Bosphorus. He's over now in the Orthodox Church. You know, and I'm probably going to have to do him what George and them had to do with Gavin when he swam the Tiber. Had to cut him off because his posts and everything else just got so anti-Anglican. It was, you know, the same thing's happening with this Orthodox layman now. His posts on Facebook and everything is getting so anti-Anglican. I'm like, really? No, you were a priest. You know. Anyway, so what are they winning them with? Because what you win them with is how you keep them. So I'd be interested to see. If you look around and you see what's going on, maybe it's just the bad things that are just what percolating up. But what's the quiet things going on? What's happening? I used to, when people here would go on vacation, go to an ACNA parish. They would come back home, and whether it's Texas, Illinois, wherever they come back, going, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe what I saw. Okay, you go into an ACNA, if it's a Reformed Episcopal Church parish, you're safe, you're solid. I'm not going to get this. If you can't find a continuing parish, because we have some folks that go to a continuing parish when they go up to North Tennessee. They said exactly like us. I'm like, well, of course, we're all continuers. So what are they winning them with? What are they doing? I mean, is it truly worship? Are they really? I mean, I've seen some services, and I'm wondering how much training does the priest have? You know, what are they doing? You know, so there's a lot of questions. Yes, they're growing, and I use this just because somebody's growing doesn't mean they're right. I mean, Islam is growing by leaps and bounds in this country.
I think different dioceses do it differently within the ACNA from what I can tell. So
well,
some places like the Diocese of South Carolina, it truly is organic growth where it's a part of the country where more people are Anglican than other parts of the country.
Oh yeah, South Carolina is a very big, Virginia, you know, look at.
I think the other parts like around North Tennessee or Middle Tennessee is what I'm more familiar with just because it's close to us.
Yeah.
It's like church for the sake of others driven growth.
Well, there's a couple of them in there that way, and you see that, and it's just kind of American consumerism. We're going to do what brings them in, and
following the non-denominational path in a lot of ways. That style of worship.
Right, that style of worship. You won't see vestments. You won't see an altar rail. You'll see a table instead of an altar, and it's very Baptistic.
But it's not even like the traditional morning prayer Episcopal style of real buttoned up, by the book, but morning prayer 3 or 4 times a month with one communion service. It's like the evangelical, non-denominational Baptist presentation with certain Anglican trappings and calling it a parish.
Right, right. You know, and there's a Protestant group out there called the CREC, and a lot of them try to be Anglican. And
they will let you do it under the 39 Articles, I think. You can be a crack parish with the 39 Articles.
They will, there's one down in Pensacola, they wear alves and stoles and this, and I watch it, I'm like, what do you do? I used parts of the 28, and I actually went to the priest when I was down there and said, look, let me help you with this.
Yeah.
No, they just hodgepodge it together. The same thing with the CREC church here. I met with one of their, I ran into one of their parishioners at a coffee shop. He and I had a conversation. He said, well, we use a prayer book. I said, well, which one? The 2019. I'm like, oh, wow, okay. So I went and looked at their Sunday service. I'm like, there ain't no prayer book. What are you talking about? I mean, I sat there and I tried to figure out what was going on.
I think they mean they used the Eucharistic prayer from that book.
No, not really. I watched it. It was no reverence whatsoever. And I'm watching and I'm, where's the Eucharistic prayer? They said what Jesus says, this is my body, this is my blood. What we read in the beginning of the Eucharistic prayer, but they stop. Yeah. And I was a little put out with how they were distributing communion so lackluster, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And a friend of ours, I was having lunch with him yesterday, and I was telling it to him, and I was just so upset, I couldn't believe it. He said, well, Father, just take solace in this. What? There was no presence of Christ in that because there was no priest, they were just going through the motions. And I'm like, oh, you're right. But so how you win them? Most of the churches in America go through the motions. How many of the ACNA parishes go through the motions? How many of the continuing parishes go through the motions? I've gone to Roman Catholic churches, but I've watched the priests bored to be up there, can't wait to get out of there, and they just going through the motions, and they're speed reading the Mass. And you're like, really? This is the Mass. You can't...
It's not like that across the street.
No. Now, the last time I went, the last 2 times I've been to a Roman Catholic church, one was in Duluth and one was in Pensacola. Now, the one in Duluth was a speed reader, let's get out of here. And I didn't see those two priests crack a smile until they got out of the church.
Mm-hmm.
And they turned everything over to middle-aged women to distribute everything. And they just sat down, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Now, the one in Pensacola that I go to, the Basilica, a little more high church for Novus Ordo, incense, Latin, Greek, like it's supposed to. The Pope Paul VI wrote when he redid the Novus
It's very
Ordo.
reverent. That's how St. Mary's
Yeah,
was,
very,
where it's
very
reverent.
very
Novus
reverent,
Ordo.
very nice, and sadly, in Anglicanism and in Roman Catholicism, those are the exceptions. I mean, I've seen priests up there with guitars in the Roman Catholic Church.
But they grow.
But they grow.
If you have the orthodoxy, I think people are attracted to that. So, like,
Yeah.
I've seen the last throes of tech in Alabama was this growth period where the most orthodox, very low church, but
Mhm.
orthodox place was adding literally 1,000 people to its parish rolls.
Yeah.
It can be done.
It can be done.
And when people get a taste for it, it's like real Coke versus,
Yeah, fake Coke.
yeah,
Yeah.
where it's not new Coke, it's not Coke Zero, it's not Diet Coke. This is like the real Coke with the real cane sugar.
Right. So you can attract people with your core beliefs and keep them. I think sometimes we get caught up in programs and flashiness, and we think that's going to keep you. The parish I was talking about when I said, earlier, I got the priest really mad. Gosh, just the last time I saw anybody from that parish, I ran into one of their deacons going to a Veterans Day parade. And I was in my collar, and I was the chaplain of the American Heritage Girl Group, and I was going to walk with him. And I saw him, and I said hi. He didn't want to really talk to me. He's a principal of a middle school now, down in Pensacola. I said, well, how's the church going? Well, I don't go there anymore. And I talked to him, and I realized they've been through 7 deacons that are none of them going to the church anymore. Where do you go to church now? Well, I really don't go. So there's a guy who was a deacon who doesn't even go to church anymore, not even nowhere. And then I go and I look at the Facebook page, because I attended that church just when I first became an Anglican. Didn't stay long, but I first came there. There's the new faces. There's nobody. They have a constant overturn. Why? I have my favorite rock and roll groups, and I will listen to their songs, but after a while I get tired of them, and I go on to something else. If you win somebody with something flashy, eventually they can get tired and go to the next flashy thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're seeing in the big box churches. That's why they have to constantly change their presentation, their service, to keep people, make more strobe lights, more this, more that, more smoke. Do something that keeps their attention when, sorry, maybe I'm old-fashioned, but what should be keeping attention while you're at church, while everything else should be secondary, is Christ. You're coming to worship. You've heard Father Gloria and I from the pulpit constantly harping on, you don't put anything before God. You don't do this. You don't do that. You're supposed to be here at Mass. That's what church is all about, your opportunity to worship God on His say, on what He says, and what worship He will accept. I can turn it flashy. We can put strobe lights up here, and half the folks would, pass out. I would. I'd probably have a stroke myself. But then what are we going to have to do to keep them? Then what would you have to do something else? So the old Orthodox traditional way has worked for 2,000 years until we became consumers. And that's what I fear is happening in the ACNA. They're becoming a consumer church, like you will see with the Baptist, and you'll see elsewhere in the big box churches. And evangelicalism is imploding. I mean, every survey is showing that people are just leaving. They're fed up because it's so shallow. It's like I used to tease when I was a Baptist. Baptist theology is a mile wide and an inch deep. I had after evening prayer last night, just talking to some folks that were not cradle Anglicans, and the wife looked at me and she says, "We've only been here for like maybe 2 years." I said, I've learned more about my faith in my 2 years and about Christ, about God and the church in 2 years here than I learned in my 40 years as a Presbyterian.
Well, we've got a spiritual depth built on a 2,000-year tradition.
Right. that when I leave, the next priest comes in can just continue because of that depth. It's like somebody asked me, the young man from the CREC church, start talking about current theologians and everything. He says, which one do you like the most? I said, well, I'm sure they're great theologians. I said, but if I want to know what Augustine says, I'm going to read Augustine. If I want to know what someone says, I'm not going to read what some man tells me Augustine says, because that's the Protestant Reformation. I'm going to go read what Augustine actually wrote. What did Justin actually write? What did Jesus say outside of the scriptures in the Diacade? Read Eusebius' church history. And you'll find letters that the Blessed Mother wrote to a prince in Damascus. Well, nobody knows that because they don't read that. You'll find the letter that Jesus wrote to the prince of the king of Edessa. I will send you one of my disciples after my time here on earth is ended. And you're reading this. Jesus never wrote anything down. Well, either he dictated it or he wrote it himself and he sent it to Edessa. And then after his ascension, an apostle, Thaddeus, went there. Okay? That's recorded in church history. You see the church fathers talk about that. So why am I going to go read Bessemer or somebody else who tells me what they're saying? Just go read what they said. Read what they reported. That's where you find the depth. And that's where you find that foundation that'll hold you to Christ. All these man-made flares and things and all that. Eventually you get bored. I get bored with it. I'll get bored with going to the same concert all the time. I go to college, I'd go see all these different groups, and after a while, maybe I go, I don't want to go see them. I don't want to listen to music anymore. That's what the church needs to focus on and refocus people on. Is it going to be hard for our? Yeah, I jokingly that movie Up. I had to watch that with my kids back in the early 2000s. I have 5 kids ranging from 20 to 31. So I've watched a lot of those movies. They had that dog, Doug, and he had the attention span of a gnat, and it was like, oh, look at that, oh, squirrel. He's just constantly popping around. He can't stay focused on anything. And I look at Christianity, what's going on here in America, and I see the same thing. People just popping for one thing, and they're not staying because, this makes me feel. Well, nowhere in Scripture does God say anything about your feelings. And that's what we focus on. It's all narcissistic, self-centered. So what is the ACNA growing? If we were growing, I'd be saying the same thing. How are we winning them? How are we winning the souls? Are we doing it a proper way like Christ did? Because remember, when Christ ascended into heaven, he preached to 4,000 or 5,000 people at a time. But when he ascended into heaven, the best guess we have is maybe 120 people were watching him go up. We know the apostles were there. That's 13. They said, some of the early church fathers said about 100, 120. So Jesus Christ, the Son of God, walked the face of the earth for 3 years. And when he ascended into heaven, he left a church of 120. And he wasn't flashy. I don't know. That's something we all need to think about. And that's one of the things Bishop Giffen talks about. Anglicanism in America needs to sit down and do some navel gazing. We need to do some inward, what is going on? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? Not what makes us feel good. If I'm doing something wrong, so I love the 28 prayer book. When we go to a second service, I'm going to be using what? 1662. I like morning prayer out of 1662. I've already told one of the evening prayer groups that, soon we're going to be doing evening prayer in 1662. It's a beautiful service. The Archbishop's okay with it. That would be, when the greater church is told that, there's going to be people in here going, the 28th. No. Because there's going to be folks that walk in, they're going to see me up here, everything going on, the incense, the singing, the chanting, and all this, and they're going to go, this is too much. But if they come to another service, which is what we call low church, maybe the traditional way it was in the Anglicanism and the Episcopal Church where everything went off the rails, they go, this is okay. Same theology, same core belief, just a different way of presenting and worshiping God. Is one better than the other?
There's also symmetry of having that offering in a place where, not so long ago, that was just the tradition within the Episcopal Church, was a morning prayer with monthly communion.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was the standard.
That was the standard. That was the standard. The Anglo-Catholic side is weekly communion. If you do
Yeah.
it daily, do it. That's where I come from. But is that the only way? Now, for a while, until Bishop Giffen kind of smacked me via Facebook, not meaning to, that's what I thought. And I'm like, well, the Bishop's got some good ideas. So can you do some self-reflecting? And most, like the continuing churches, can't. There's not, when somebody tries to get them to, they just stiffen up, like most people. ACNA, the same thing. They have to settle women's ordination. They can't continue to have these dual integrities. They're not even in communion with each other, which is, you can't have a church that's saying two things. One, women's ordination is heresy. No, it's approved. Well, which one is it? Or you can have the bishops send out a report in 2017 saying it goes against all tradition, logic, and scripture, but we're going to do it. What? You got to take a stance. Are you going to stand with Christ, the church, or are you going to say, I know better than Christ and the church? And that's what's going on in the ACNA. That's what's going on in the continuing church. That's what's going on in America, the Church in America in general. I mean, I jokingly say if St. Paul was still alive, he wrote us a letter. He would start off, I, Paul, a sinner saved by the grace of God, to the Church in America. Guys, I owe the Galatians an apology, and what are y'all doing? Because he called the Galatians foolish for following false teachings. I mean, he would probably have to write another letter to the Galatians apologizing, and then, he would come here. Like I said Sunday, would Paul even be a deacon in the church today? No. The church today would not, they'll talk about it, but they would not let Paul be a church deacon, not even a deacon. He's an apostle. He wouldn't make it to the diaconate. None of the way the church is in America, none of them, the fathers, the apostolic fathers, and even Jesus Christ, if he walked through the front door, I'm sure there'd be enough folks go, hey, Jesus, you really didn't get this right, because I know better. That's just the hubris we have.
Here's a thought experiment on the continuing church side, is assume that Bishop Giffen's policies of approving these different prayer books and receiving more people and being a little more ecumenical, assume that would add 3 families to your average continuing parish. But it's 3 families from the tech ACNA milieu where they're used to tithing, they're used to contributing in different ways, hosting events. How could that revolutionize your average continuing parish to just get that infusion of a handful of families, some money?
Look at it here, St. Charles. When I got here, we were happy to get 20 people. We've had up to 96 people in this room, in the nave. A lot of younger families, like yours. It would revitalize the church. It would change. Some of the older folks that have been here don't like some of the change. They don't like giving up the power. But I'm looking here, I'm seeing more and more younger people becoming the head of the ACW in the vestry, wanting to do things, do this, do that. I mean, we got our young people are starting we have 2 ministries that we're working with on the campus of University of Alabama, Huntsville. In Focus, one of our families is working on with them. And then a couple of our younger college students are actually working with Turning Point USA. And their goal is, Turning Point USA is more political, but they want to bring in people like Father Robinson and others to bring in the Christian side, because Charlie Kirk, claims to be a Christian, so let's bring in some of these Christian speakers here at the University of Alabama, Huntsville. Okay, and I'm all for that. Would we be doing that 5 years ago? No, why? Because these young people wouldn't be here. And that's the future of the church, is the young folks. I watched a little girl walk in Sunday. I remember when her mom, her family came here before her mom was even pregnant with her, and she was baptized here, and she's about 3 years old now, and she's just walking in. Well, that's the future of the church. Now, how did that family come here? Well, they went to another they went to an ACNA parish, and they were like, oh no, we're out of here. And they came here. And the same thing, we have Russian Orthodox folks sitting in this parish. Why? They were welcome, but every now and then we have a Muslim family come sits with us, and they listen, and they participate as they can. They don't take communion. They come forward for a blessing. They want me to bless them. Okay? That's the future. You know, that ecumenicalism, that reaching out, staying firm on your core beliefs, staying firm with Christ. Christ is the only way to heaven. And the church. But you make it welcome. And you bring in new people, young people with new ideas. Our social media guy, he and his wife, they're in their mid-20s. You know, look at how things are changing. And they're like, well, don't worry, Father, we'll help you navigate through all this social media stuff, because I'm not big on that. You bring in some young folks like that into every continuing church, you're going to start seeing growth. The first people we started seeing coming here was after COVID were some high schoolers that came here. And they came back with their sister, and they came back with their mom, then their grandma, and then it was these young kids. And then you see a father would come in. That's how Alan got here. That's how Jeffrey got here. They would come in and check us out, and the next week they bring their families, and they never left. And they were younger families, small children. If you can get that, that's how St. James on the Glebe is growing. Because you get people who are excited about their parish. And you have a leadership that's, okay, these are the guardrails, orthodoxy. What do you want to do? And that's pretty much me. As long as it doesn't go outside the guardrails of orthodoxy in the traditional way, I'll bend on the traditional way if it will help save souls. The orthodoxy, I'm not going to bend at all. And I've had people leave here because I would not bend to social pressure like Black Lives Matter and all those. I'm not going to bend. And that's what the church has to do. I'm not here to please Huntsville. I'm here to save their soul. And that's what the church has forgotten. So if the continuing church had 3 or 4 families that came from Tech, and they've got talking to their families, other friends, and they came in, and also a problem, you're going to have those people coming like from Tech or PCUSA or Methodist Church now that just went through all things. They have been so spiritually abused by their church, their home, and they're very leery of any other organized religion. Monday night sat down with a woman who wants to come here. Her husband has been abused in a lot of different ways, by the Roman Catholic Church. He won't go to Rome. He won't walk into any church because of the treatment he had when he was a Roman Catholic.
They've seen too much.
They've seen too much. They've experienced too much. They've been abused spiritually too much, and they go sit home, and they don't trust anybody. Like I'm trying to turn this place into, hey, just come here and sit and let us love on you. We don't expect anything of you. Just come, sit, and know that God loves you, and just worship Him together, and we'll be saved. That's the best way to do it, but you got to get that word out. So if we got 3 or 4 Tech folks, a couple of Methodist folks coming in, and they see that this is a safe place, they'll start talking about our church, or any continuing church, or even an ACNA church, or a Roman Catholic church. That's what we have to do today, because the evangelicals are leaving in droves over a lot of issues. Then you can see all their contemporary music. How many of their bands and leaders and stuff have come out and said, well, I've never been a Christian. They just had DC Talk guy just came out a couple of months ago, and you're like, well, they don't even make it on the radar anymore because they're so used to it. The church has returned to what it's supposed to be, a haven for souls, a hospital for souls. We're all sinners. We've all fallen short of the glory of God. But that's why we come together to worship God, feel His love, and receive His grace.
Father, we've covered a lot of ground.
We sure
Get
have.
ready
I'm
for
sure
Mass.
I got to get ready for Mass. So yeah, we have Mass at noon. So if you ever have any time downtown, you'll be in and out. It's a low Mass, so it's about 40 minutes, 45 minutes. You'll be in and out. and get back to work and go eat lunch.
Very good.
All right.
Until next time.
Yeah, God bless y'all.